I knew something was off when my intern called me from the stairwell, whispering like she was hiding from a bomb threat. They locked your access to the shared folders. Which ones? All of them. Legal, ops, even your own presentations. She sounded winded. Said she overheard Carter from procurement joke that I was officially radioactive. Said the Slack thread about my exit already had a custom emoji. A rat in heels. Funny thing, I hadn't resigned. Hadn't been fired. Hell, just delivered a keynote at their annual compliance retreat 3 days ago. The one where they all clapped too hard and too long after I closed with, "Compliance isn't paperwork. It's power, disguised as protocol." Turns out they believed that line more than I thought. I hung up, walked past the glass walls of their open-concept ego farm. My name, already missing from the lobby screen. Assistant's chair suspiciously filled by a man named Brennan who wouldn't make eye contact. No warning, no HR meeting, just surgical deletion. When I got back to my office, my building pass blinked red. I had to buzz the janitor just to grab my umbrella, the one I left behind because I trusted I'd be back Monday. The only thing untouched was the plant I forgot to water for a week. Even that looked confused. By evening, my LinkedIn was a war zone of passive-aggressive farewells, wishing her well on her next chapter. Grateful for the moments of collaboration. Transitions are growth in disguise. No context, no explanation, but buried deep in a private group message meant for board-only eyes and accidentally sent to my old work email, which someone forgot to deactivate. I found it. A single PDF. Subject, risk mitigation, external consultant face-out. I clicked, scrolled, froze, page 3. Bullet 5, Mercer to be quietly removed from all active projects. Blacklist from internal compliance, vendor pipeline. Initiate face-out language across departments by May 1. Today was April 30. They planned to erase me before my birthday. I stared at the screen as adrenaline pushed my coffee into panic. But beneath the sting, I smiled, because they'd blacklisted me from the industry. Without remembering, I write the damn rulebook they all pretend to follow. And somewhere in a file they never read was a clause with my initials, one they forgot to delete when they ghosted me. A clause that meant every single one of their regulatory certificates had an expiration date they couldn't outrun. And I was about to remind them. The first domino fell at 8:14 a.m. sharp, 2 days later. Junior auditor at Lexington Capital emailed their risk division in full panic. Urgent, our anti-fraud clearance was flagged as non-verified. Mercer Consulting no longer listed as a certifying body in our vendor profile. That one CC'd 5 execs, 2 of whom were already on thin ice for blowing ESG scores last quarter. Then came the calls, first from a compliance director who once made a joke about my shrill voice in a boardroom full of men who laughed like they hadn't built their careers on my PowerPoints. "Lena," he said, dragging out the vowels like we were friends. "There's been a little mix-up on our end. Nothing major. Just wondering if we could get a revised certificate for our ISO attestation." I let him talk, let him squirm, let him imply I'd somehow forgotten to click a box like I was still his assistant, not the woman whose initials were coded into the compliance templates of 22 Fortune 500s. When he finally shut up, I replied flatly, "I'm afraid Mercer Consulting has undergone internal restructuring. Your files are under review. I'll notify you if and when recertification becomes possible." Click. By noon, the panic was viral. Emails leaked. Internal chats got screen-capped. Someone forwarded me a Slack message from Greenmore Logistics where their legal head screamed in all caps, "Who the hell approved blacklisting the woman who literally signs our liability insurance confirmations?" Nobody had. That was the most delicious part. They'd all assumed someone else pulled the trigger. Cowards never check the barrel. They just pray the bullet lands somewhere safe. Meanwhile, my office buzzed like a casino. Mel, regulatory affairs bulldog and caffeine addict, had gone full scorched earth, auditing our entire client list with a vengeance usually reserved for ex-husbands. She kicked open my door holding 3 binders. "Do you want blood or humiliation first? Surprise me." She grinned. "Westbrook International. Falsified data in their DEI audit last year. You flagged it. They paid a bribe to get it buried. Prove it. Already forwarded to the ethics committee at the SEC." Just like that, the reckoning had begun. But here's the thing they didn't understand about me. I don't scream. I don't threaten. I write things down. I build legal fortresses out of bylaws and fine print. And when I burn someone, it's with the slow, polite fire of a candle melting through marble. I walked over to my office window, watched the towers where my former clients nervously sipped overpriced espresso while praying their internal risk didn't boil over. I thought blacklisting me would be clean. Silent, strategic, but what they'd actually done was hit send on their own self-destruct sequence, and they were only on step 1. By Friday, they were begging. Not in public, no, not yet. That would require the kind of spine these people only grow after lawsuits. But the private emails? Oh, they were delicious. Subject lines like, urgent clarification, request Mercer oversight role, seeking reinstatement options immediate from one woman to another. That last one came from Amanda Greeley, the same Harvard-branded gaslight in kitten heels, who once rolled her eyes mid-meeting and said, Lena, no offense, but compliance isn't a personality. Now she was forwarding me scanned copies of her personal calendar, flagged with Lena review written in pink pen like I was some kind of corporate fairy godmother. She signed off with, happy to grab lunch and reset. Reset? Honey, this isn't a router. This is your career. But I wasn't after lunch. I was after rot. Quiet, systemic, irreversible rot. The kind that starts in the foundation and chews up the wiring before anyone smells the smoke. So I didn't reply to Amanda. Instead, I called Trent Pharma, mid-level regulator with a grudge and a memory like a goddamn elephant. Back in 2018, Amanda had tanked his internal audit recommendations to land a consulting deal with her husband's firm. The paper trail was subtle, but not subtle enough. I had the emails. I had the timestamps. I had the whistleblower clause written, ironically, by Amanda herself. Trent, I said, I'm not asking for favors. I'm just handing you the keys to a very interesting door. He paused. And how deep does it go? Past your knees. Maybe to the neck. Click. By Sunday night, Amanda's name popped up on an anonymous Reddit thread for insider risk exposure in corporate ESG fraud. By Monday morning, she'd wiped her socials. By Tuesday, Greenmore had suspended 4 pending shipments across Europe due to a temporary compliance hold. And that was when they called. The same they who'd buried my name in a PDF like it was radioactive. Same ones who thought excluding me would give them a clean board and a stronger quarterly narrative. A man named Julian, CEO of Foresight Partners and part-time golf colonizer, left a voicemail that smelled like desperation and overpriced cologne. Lena, let's be civil. You and I both know you're too smart for this kind of vendetta. Let's realign. God, men like him love verbs that don't mean anything. I let it sit for 2 days, let him stew in the smell of his own decaying leverage. Then I sent back one line. Realignment begins with a public retraction and a wire transfer to Mercer Holdings for breach of Clause 7B. An hour later, he emailed, let's talk terms. But I wasn't interested in talking. I was interested in timing. Because what none of them realized, what not a single one of those empire-polishing frauds had considered, was that I hadn't even started the real damage yet. Came next, and it started with a birthday party. Mine, where the guest list was curated like a war room. The venue was a rooftop in Midtown, frosted glass bar, custom cocktails, everything black and silver like a wake for professionalism. On the surface, it was a party. Laughter, music, the kind of clinking glass ambience that makes bad men forget their prey. But this wasn't a celebration. This was the lighting of the fuse. Everyone on the invite list had one thing in common. They'd either underestimated me, owed me, or once tried to edge me out and failed. And now, they were all packed into one glittering box, sipping mezcal and pretending not to notice the wolves in the room. Even Julian showed up. Smiling too hard, sweating through a $4,000 suit, probably hoping he could charm his way back into certification territory before the Q2 reports hit the fan. Happy birthday, he said, handing me a box. I didn't open it. I just raised a brow. What's inside? A job offer or a subpoena? He laughed. I didn't. I let him sweat for 5 minutes before I turned to the mic. Thank you all for coming, I said, clinking a spoon against my glass. Tonight's not just about my birthday. It's about integrity. You remember integrity, right? Polite chuckles, a few stiff backs. One guy visibly flinched. I clocked it. Someone recently suggested I should be more civil. That revenge was beneath me. I let that hang, then smiled. I agree. Revenge is petty, but accountability, that's just good governance. The projector behind me flicked on, and the air turned cold. Slide 1, a spreadsheet. Slide 2, a time-stamped email thread showing Foresight Partners forging a vendor signature, mine. Slide 3, an internal memo leaked with Julian's initials, authorizing a hush payment for a failed inspection at a manufacturing site in Jakarta. Silence. Julian's face froze. I watched his throat move like he'd swallowed glass. Someone at the back whispered, "Holy shit," under their breath. Then I dropped the final slide. The one that mattered. A photo, date-stamped, watermarked, geolocated, of Julian and Amanda meeting with a compliance broker who'd been under federal investigation for bribery. It was the same guy Amanda once called a family friend when I'd questioned his presence on our advisory calls. I didn't say anything after that. I didn't need to. I raised my glass to clarity and to consequences that don't need introductions. People clapped awkwardly, then louder, then with real panic in their eyes as the implications settled in. Amanda, absent. She declined the invite, said she was traveling for wellness, hoped the retreat came with a strong VPN and extradition insurance. Julian tried to speak after the toast, tried to explain. I walked away mid-sentence, because what mattered now wasn't their apologies. It was the chain reaction I'd set off. By morning, 4 companies would freeze their contracts with foresight. 2 would issue internal ethics inquiries. And 1 ambitious junior associate would send my slide deck to a journalist at the Financial Herald, anonymously. Of course, all according to plan. But the best part, the one move no one saw coming, was still in my purse. A flash drive labeled Final. It was a Tuesday when the flash drive did its real damage. Not with fanfare. Not with some Hollywood hacking sequence. Just a quiet upload, 4 files, no passwords, no watermark, sent from a burner laptop in a WeWork where no one knew my name. Each file named the same way. Internal audit preliminary findings do not distribute guess what happened. They distributed them. Everywhere. Within 6 hours, they'd leaked to 2 industry watchdog groups, 1 European regulatory body, and my personal favorite, a scorned ex-employee at LexCap, who still had admin-level access to their internal Slack. The first file, forensic breakdown of a diversity audit Westbrook, had fabricated to land a federal contract. The second, expense reports showing inflated travel costs that masked bribery payments to an offshore shell firm. The third, screenshots of Julian's executive chat, calling regulators donkey clerks with clipboards and mommy issues. And the fourth, a full PDF contract proving Amanda's ESG compliance rating was rubber-stamped using Mercer's old letterhead after they blacklisted me. That last one was my signature. Forged, badly. By Wednesday morning, 3 of the companies mentioned in the leaks had disabled their social media pages and issued identical, panic statements. We take these allegations seriously and are initiating an internal review. The kind of corporate haiku that means we're screwed and the lawyers are sweating. But I wasn't done. Not yet, because I'd been saving one more call, a name that could set the whole forest on fire if I just whispered it into the right ear. His name was Jonah Hart, senior editor at the Financial Herald, Pulitzer runner-up. He'd once emailed me asking for quote on a supply chain scandal I refused to touch. I ghosted him then. Now I sent him everything. Clean, organized, labeled. I didn't just leak, I taught the story how to walk. He called me 5 minutes later. Holy hell, Mercer. Sure you want this traced back to you? I don't want credit, I said. I want consequences. And I could hear the smirk in his voice, happy to oblige. The article dropped 2 days later. Front page, digital and print. The compliance illusion, how ESG became a smokescreen for corporate fraud. It named names, showed receipts, ran timelines. But most importantly, it shredded the myth that the industry could function without people like me. Or more precisely, without me, I didn't answer my phone that weekend. Let it ring until the voicemail filled up. I took a train to the coast, booked a glass cabin where I could hear the ocean hit the rocks like the slow thud of justice finally arriving. And in the silence of that storm, I read the final message from Mel. Just 5 words, Julian resigned. Amanda under investigation. Then one more follow-up. 20 minutes later, SEC called. They want you. I set the phone down, picked up my wine, and smiled. Because that's the thing about being blacklisted. It only works if you don't own the blacklist. The subpoena came on a Monday, wrapped in manila like a polite threat. Hand-delivered by a man in a gray suit who looked like he'd spent his entire career drinking lukewarm coffee in windowless rooms. He didn't say much, just handed it to me and nodded once, like we were both in on the joke. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just thanked him and shut the door. Inside, the letterhead glowed like fire. United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Beneath it, request for voluntary deposition Miss Lena Mercer. Not a threat, not a warning, an invitation. One they didn't extend to people they wanted to destroy, but to those who held the matches and knew exactly where the bodies were buried. I brought Mel with me. She walked into that sterile room like it was a spa, sat across the table. 2 investigators, 1 attorney, and a stenographer who didn't look up once. Miss Mercer, the man began, can you confirm your role in the certification of the following corporate ESG reports over the last 3 fiscal years? I didn't even glance at the folder he slid across the table. I just leaned forward and said, Would you like to hear about the ghost firms funneling funds through Belize? The fake environmental partnerships propped up by photo ops and carbon calculators no one ever verified. They blinked. Mel slid a USB across the table. Same label, final. This contains internal memos, unreleased audits, and flagged risk logs Mercer Consulting collected but were never acted on because they were politically inconvenient. The room went still. Why now? One of them asked, cautious. I met his eyes. Because they thought they could erase me, because they forged my name, froze me out, and built their empires on performative ethics. And because I want the world to know, compliance isn't a prop, it's a weapon, and they gave it to the wrong woman. 3 hours later, they walked us out personally. One of them shook my hand with both of his eyes sharp. We may need expert testimony. Just say when, I said. We left through the back. No press. No fanfare. Just the faint scent of nerves in the air, like ozone before a lightning strike. By the time we got to the car, Mel was grinning like a wolf. They're going to implode, aren't they? She said. I didn't answer, because my phone was buzzing. Blocked number, I answered. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Deep, slow, siruped in charm. Lena, this is Governor Barnes' office. He'd like to speak with you about the upcoming State Ethics Board restructuring. Pause, and your potential role as lead commissioner. My breath caught, not from shock, from the realization that the blacklist had become a resume. And the same people who once ghosted me in meetings were now building chairs I'd be too powerful to sit in. You can tell the governor, I said, I don't take appointments. I create them. Click. Mel stared at me. Are we, the establishment now? No, I said. We're the audit they never passed. And they were about to feel every red flag they ever ignored come crashing down like a ledger with no backup. Boardroom at Foresight Partners looked like it had been through a hurricane made of spreadsheets and shame. I watched from a live stream, private link, leaked by an ally on the inside. Poorly muted mics caught the chaos. Raised voices, shoes scuffing marble, the desperate shuffle of a man who just realized his parachute was stitched from lies. Julian wasn't speaking anymore. He was pacing. Jaw locked. Tie loosened like it had been strangling him all morning. Across from him sat a lawyer whispering in lowercase, useless legalese muttered through clenched teeth. Then came the vote. 14-1. Motion passed. Immediate resignation of Julian Cross, CEO, pending full investigation. The one dissenting vote, Julian himself, of course. As they closed the session, one executive, Clara Mendoza, paused before logging out, looked directly into her webcam and said, For the record, I warned you about blacklisting Lena Mercer. Poetic almost, if I had a heart for their kind. That same hour, the Financial Herald dropped part 2 of Jonah's investigation, The Greenwashing Machine, How Corporations Weaponized Ethics to Silence Whistleblowers. My name was there again, but this time on my terms. No longer former consultant. Now, regulatory architect, industry whistleblower, lead candidate for the State Ethics Board. I closed the article and opened my inbox. Full. Flooded. Requests from international firms. Law schools asking me to guest lecture. Even a goddamn TEDx pitch from someone who thought I should title my talk How to Burn Down a Lie Without Getting Burned. Tempting, but I had bigger plans. At 4:06 p.m., I sent one email. To Amanda Greeley, subject, formal request for retraction and compensation body. Amanda, as you are now aware, forged signature bearing my name in your ESG compliance packet constitutes both civil fraud and criminal misconduct. Attached, please find a formal request for public retraction, financial restitution, and a signed letter to be distributed to all former Mercer Consulting clients clarifying the false certification. Deadline for compliance. 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in escalated legal action and direct reporting to federal authorities. Warmest regards, Lena Mercer. No emojis. No PS. Just silence wrapped in legal threat. I didn't expect a reply. Which is why, when my phone dinged 20 minutes later with one line from Amanda, name your number, I knew the storm had finally passed the point of denial. She wasn't fighting anymore. She was negotiating surrender. Elle called 2 minutes later, breathless. She caved? Not yet, I said, but her grip's gone, and when a snake can't squeeze, all it has left is slither. I stared out the window of my office, my new office, in the high-rise they said I'd never enter again. The sun dipped below the skyline, painting the buildings gold and blood red. Poetic. But not the ending, not yet, because there was one final move left. The piece no one saw coming. One name that never appeared in the leaks, because I'd saved it. A name that tied it all together, and it was about to drop. The name I'd held back wasn't Julian, wasn't Amanda, wasn't even one of the hollowed-out CEOs still spinning apologies on LinkedIn like PR rosaries. It was Donovan Blake. You won't find him on most org charts. He's the man behind the curtain, the whisperer, the fixer, the risk solutions advisor whose consultancy lived in shadow. Never signed anything, never sent an email from a traceable server. But his fingerprints all over the rod. He orchestrated the blacklist, not because I was a threat to their reputations, but because I refused to play the offshore compliance game he ran like a silent casino. Every bribe sanitized, every certification laundered through third-party layers, until no one remembered who actually signed what. Except me. I'd archived everything. Every meeting, every invoice, every voice memo where he said things like, "Ethics is flexible if the money's right, Lena. That's why they keep us around." And now I had the recordings, the dates, the shell companies, the quiet PayPal bribes sent under fake names, even the receipt for a $22,000 Montblanc pen he gifted to a federal subcontractor under office supplies. So I dropped it all. Not to the press, not to the SEC, but to his clients. Every single firm who'd used Donovan Blake's firm as a compliance intermediary received a curated file titled, "Proof of Complicity Failure to Disclose is Liability." I didn't include a threat, didn't need to. I knew the silence would do the bleeding for me. Within 48 hours, 3 firms froze payments. One filed a preemptive lawsuit. Another issued a public statement condemning third-party malfeasance, classic corporate dodgeball. But Blake went quiet, phone dead, website offline, office cleared out like a ghost town. Mel texted, "You just vaporized a man with a flash drive." I didn't reply, because I was already halfway through my next meeting with the Ethics Oversight Committee. A panel of 11, suits sharp, eyes sharper. They asked one question, "Why do you want this role?" I smiled, "I don't. I want the system to want it." Because until now, ethics has been treated like a checkbox. Intend to make it a sword. There was silence. Then nods. They voted the next morning, unanimous. I was in. Lead Commissioner, State Ethics Board, term 6 years, power final. They blacklisted me. Forgot who made the list. Now, those same men are reshuffling policies with my name in the footnotes. Their interns study my case like doctrine. And Amanda, last I heard, she's consulting for yoga studios, selling reform like it comes in lotion form. As for me, I don't burn bridges. I flood them and build new ones out of the wreckage. Compliance isn't revenge. It's the weapon no one sees until it's already cut the empire in half.